welcome you all with love, and thank you for the nice introduction. What I like to do is start with dancing, and that's our first lesson in this lecture on longevity, because dancing is a good part of, is an important part of longevity. So let's dance first, talk later. We'll dance for 3 minutes, and I invite you to join me here. Not sure what happened, but we're ready for the music and also the video. Okay. Again, I welcome you all with love. And I'm just going to start with a little prayer, merging the heart and mind, which is what the dancing is doing too. Merging the heart and mind, and also the brain and mind. Here's the prayer. Shemikud Kudusha Brihu Ushinete Bi'ilu Imu Udilu Uliu Biaktad B'Shem Kozriel. Amen. Okay, here we are. So, how is dancing part of longevity? So, part of longevity is called movement and balance. We know with age, people tend to have a less secure balance. Okay? And it's also about joy and expression and energy. We know, the research tells us, that it also helps to reverse cognitive decline and Alzheimer's, as well as decrease anxiety and depression, which about half the people in America have. Okay, that's a lot. So dancing specifically has been shown in research to decrease anxiety and depression. So we have, it's good for your coordination, it's good for your balance, it's good for clarity of mind, because the research does show that it improves cognition as well. So there are many, many things that make a difference of why it's good to dance. Personally, I like it. I dance because it brings joy and happiness. That's why I dance. But that's our first lesson. Movement, flexibility, joy, and love. All those get released when you're dancing. So that's our first lesson. Now we're going to go to my slideshow. And enduring radiant health, also known as longevity. But I like enduring radiant health because it's radiant and it's enduring. Okay, next slide, please. And that's kind of me as I've been introduced. Okay, and these are some of the books. Next slide. So here I am at 82. And that's me dancing. That's me with my wonderful wife, Shanti. And we're playing a little bit here. Why am I showing a picture of my wife? And I'm going to tell you why. Because the single most important, I'll say it again, the single most important factor in longevity is a healthy married relationship. That's it. And that is what all the research has shown over the years. Okay? That's not that nutrition isn't important, that exercise isn't important, that meditation isn't important. All those things are important. But relationship, a healthy, happy relationship, is the number one important factor in longevity. And research suggests that people in a happy marriage live about 49% longer. That's big, that's a lot. Now, second to that are independent women who haven't been in a relationship, but they've established their life on their own. And then we have people who've been married, divorced, and so forth, they're third. And the people who live the least long are single men. Single men don't do as well. Okay, and they have more need to actually be in relationship. So that's real interesting statistics that that have been validated a variety of times. Next slide, please. So here we are playing a little bit, because you need to play in relationships. Next slide. And this is us. Now, we do a lot of things together. Obviously, he's seeing us sitting in full lotus. We do yoga together. Actually, Shanti, my wife, is my yoga teacher. Okay? But it's all about the resonance that happens. Now, there's a lot of interesting research. One of the things it shows that the overall well-being in the relationship depends on the man. They kind of can create good or bad in the relationship. And the other thing that's important is the happiness of the partner. In other words, your partner's happiness and sense of well-being is actually in terms of longevity, more important than yours, which I find fascinating, but it does appear to be the case. So we've outlined a few things. Usually we talk about nutrition or exercise, all of which are important. But the number one thing, this is the first time I've actually really brought this out, is a healthy, happy relationship. Now, the research also shows that when there's a divorce, the children, if they're living in the home, and divorce by the kids are younger, actually lose about 5 years off their lifespan, which is a little shocking, but it is the case. And they don't have as happy potential relationships as well. But in terms of longevity, it's a 5-year loss. And that's actually pretty important to see what that means. In terms of the overall picture in our society, where 50% maybe of married couples are getting divorced. So those are just a few statistics that, not to overwhelm you, but to give you a feeling for how important it is to have a healthy relationship. Next slide, please. So what's the secret to a healthy relationship? Well, the mystery of intimacy. To have a healthy relationship, we need to be at this last frontier of human consciousness. So it's a little work, okay? It's not just that easy. Next slide, please. So in a healthy relationship, we're challenged to maintain and grow in this intimate relationship, which also pushes us to our limit in a good way. And we live in a society that doesn't understand this and actually doesn't really support the evolutionary transformative power of marriage and secret relationship. Okay? It's a woke world. Relationships don't have the same level of importance. And there are many reasons for that. Some are social, some are political. We're not going to talk about that, because the key concept is a healthy relationship is a benefit not only to yourself and to your longevity, but to society and to our children. Next slide, please. Now, in a healthy relationship, we're talking about joining romantic love. Now, a lot of people say, well, that romantic love goes after a few years. Not necessarily. Romantic love is something that we keep recreating in every moment. Shadi and I have been married for years, but we share a romantic love every day. You got to put some consciousness into it. You got to put some awareness into it. But we keep it at that level. You know, okay, so we have romantic love, sexual passion, then you have issues of reproduction, and truly, marriage is a spiritual path. In yoga, we call it Tantra. And in the Torah, the biblical thing is it's a spiritual path, that male and female come together to become one. And one becomes two, and then becomes one. So that path is laid out very clearly, and it's how we grow spiritually. And this relationship needs to develop at all levels, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, to be a complete relationship. So, next slide, please. And it is part of our evolution. It's part of evolution of human consciousness. It's the biggest challenge. Obviously, our society is having a little bit of difficulty with this challenge, but that is what we're talking about. Next slide. So, let's expand it from relationship to living love. And I want to be clear, I already hinted at that. It has to continually renew itself consciously. You have to pay attention. Okay? And this living love supports a couple then in creating something new in our society. So living love is the key word here. Next slide. So what we're talking about is not just longevity, although I already mentioned 49% longer life with a happy married couple, but relationships in the context I'm talking about, which they're not talked about that way as much as I would like to see, is a vehicle for the evolution of human consciousness. Because this tantric path, using an Eastern term, is about how people in their interaction can support each other in growing spiritually. That's the key concept. How do people in their actions support each other to grow spiritually? And that's key in the kind of broader tantric, which is beyond sexual, broader idea of relationship. Next slide. Now, what else is needed in this longevity? Conscientious, prudent, persistent, well organized. Well, what am I talking about here? Well, the research there's an 80-year study that I don't know ended in the 80s approximately, and or 90s, sorry, and they found that the people who lived the longest were people even at 5 years old were shown to be and were the most conscientious. And that means they pay more attention to their health, to their well-being, to their role in life, to their life purpose, to their life meaning, to their relationships. Think about it. These people are the ones that pay the most attention. In general, women are more conscientious. And people tend to see it as a little bit more of a feminine quality. And the research also shows that men who take on are more conscientious and have a little bit more feminine quality to them also live longer, which I find interesting. But conscientious means paying attention to the details of your life. Okay? From your health habits, to your social habits, to your relationships, to your exercise routine, to every aspect of your life, and then where it goes from that towards your life purpose. So having a life purpose is an important part of that. But very specifically, conscientiousness actually is in the top 5. Some people feel it's the number 1, besides relationship, aspect needed for longevity. Conscientious people don't take as many risks. They may not do skydiving and things like that, but they're paying attention to their everyday details of their life, of their relationship, of their work situation, every aspect. They're paying attention. So this is at the top of the list for longevity. Next slide. Now, being adaptable, particularly in this day and age, is very important because, as probably everyone who's listening knows that we're living in a very socially kind of confused, chaotic time. It's not like in the 50s where you kind of knew what was up. We don't know what's coming next. So your ability to be adaptable is very important. Why? Because it decreases stress. It allows you to move with the flow of how your life is taking you. That makes a difference. So it's one of the main pieces in longevity is adapting to your life situation rather than fighting with it. And seeing, I'll use another word, whatever God does is for the best. You're always seeing the positive in what's going on. So it allows you to be in a positive worldview, even if you don't understand what's really happening. That's just part of how life works for us. Okay, so another key concept. Next slide, please. Now, it does feel sometimes like we're flour breaking through the cement here. And it is the energy and intent not only to live a healthy life, but to reach your highest potential, to reach your highest goals in life. And what we do see is that people who have this willpower, and I'm going to say conscientiousness to a certain extent, tend to be more successful. And that's important in not only relationship, but in business, and whatever the point of your life is about, you have the willpower and intention to make it happen. Now, what we also find, remember, this is about longevity, is that those people tend to live about 5 years longer. So you're people who are very successful, and we often say, oh, they're type A, and that these people who are very successful type A's, on the average, according to the research, live about 5 years longer. And it has to do with the purpose of life and living to fulfill your life purpose at whatever stage of your life that you're in, at whatever stage. Fulfilling your life purpose. In yogic terms, we talk about fulfilling your dharma, which is right livelihood, which is what you're supposed to be doing at that point in your life. Contributing for yourself, but also to society, and really your family and everything that's connected to you. So that willpower is really important, and that's the willpower that also helps you be consistent every day. And as we look at health, we also look at health habits, and it helps you get up to do your exercise every day and to do your meditating every day. So these are, it's a very important thing, and it's in the top 5 of longevity qualities and practices. Next slide. Now, normally, I mean, we kind of understand about eating an optimal diet, but the statement I want to make here is, you can't eat your way to God. That's number one. And you can't really eat your way to kind of an optimal longevity. Now, we do know that vegans, people who don't have meat, fish, chicken, or dairy, vegan men live about 6 years longer, depending on the study, and vegan women, 6 to 7 years longer, and vegan women live about 4 years longer. Now, why is it that the men living longer than women? Well, the fact is that the women are more likely to be vegan, more likely to have good health habits, so it doesn't make as much difference. But for a man, being vegan is a bigger, I'll say bigger step. And, okay, so, but that's the research. And in general, vegans live longer. If you look at the long-lived people who live in 150 years, or 110 years, 120 years, they're all vegan, okay? They also don't eat too much. So that's the key. Now, I just want to mention the optimum diet part, which is what we talk about a lot, but these are the basics. Eating organic is extremely important. The amount of pesticides and herbicides and everything else that they're putting in the crops and in the food is increasingly toxic. And why do we do plant source only? Well, meat, fish, chicken, and dairy contain, because they're higher up in the food chain, contain 95–96% of the pesticides and herbicides in the environment. So obviously, if you eat lower on the food chain, you're not as exposed to such intensity of toxic materials. Low glycemic, well, what we know, and we're going to talk about a little bit more, I do a lot of work with diabetes, as you were told, and the less carbohydrate and sugar that you have in your diet, we know the longer you live, and the less you're stimulating insulin, which actually is life-shortening, an excess of insulin. Okay, so you want to keep a low insulin index. We want high minerals. About 95–96% of the American public is deficient in minerals. One of the most important ones I'm going to mention is magnesium. In my next session, I will talk about supplements, and I will talk about kind of mineral needs. So I'm not going to focus on that part today, but in my next talk, that's listed, I will be talking about it. High water content. Well, what does that mean? Everybody's physiologically different. Some people need a lot of water. We call them vatas, or Ayurvedically. Some people need very little water, kaphas. So I won't tell you everybody should have 8 glasses of water a day. What I will tell you is a better way to judge it, okay, is if you're well hydrated, usually, if you don't have a bladder infection, usually you should be urinating every 1.5 to 2 hours. That's a sign of hydration, unless there's some other problems going on. And it's more accurate because we come in all different sizes and body types and body chemistry. So otherwise, it's saying that here's the set volume you should have a day. It's totally unscientific, put it that way. Now, my research, and I've written about it, is doing a 100% vegan diet, no meat, fish, chicken, or dairy. You're not taking any death into you, or fear and misery, and affecting your mind and your brain. Okay. And 80% live. And I'm going to show you some pictures in just a little bit to give you an idea why that's important. And we want to eat according to our constitution. There's depending on the system, but in the Ayurvedic system, we have a variety of different constitutions. And then in the kind of English-speaking systems, we have what we call fast and slow oxidizers. The fast oxidizers are the ones that need more protein. Slow oxidizers need less protein. What does that mean? Well, 35–40% of protein in your diet for a slow oxidizer, and up to 70 or 80% or 70% for a fast oxidizer. These are people that need more protein. Now, what I just said is key. We are biochemically individualized. Chromosome 19 tells you kind of what kind of food, but how much protein, fat, and carbohydrate we should have. Okay? Now, the other research shows that the less you eat, the longer you live. And that's research done with animals, but also humans and different cultures. So when people don't starve themselves, but undereat, there's a tendency for longevity. And that seems to be across the board in all the different societies. So it's good, myself, okay, I just really have one meal a day and have a little bit of drink and supplements and herbs in the morning. That's it. And also not eating in the late afternoon, early evening, or later, because our digestive powers are less. So the recommended for longevity is eating something for breakfast and lunch, which in the Ayurvedic is the pitta time from 2 to 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. Didn't say it right. From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the right time, the best time, what we call the pitta time of the day, to eat your main meal. So there's cycles of the day. Eating at night is not so good. So, and then finally, made with love. Whether you're making your meal with love or someone else, you want it made with love. And even if you go to a restaurant, I've done this. It didn't necessarily work out that well, but I was in New York and it was a high-level vegan restaurant. I just went into the kitchen. I'm curious. Are these people preparing with love? I can't honestly say that they were. It was something to think about. And I kind of challenged the people with it. Are you preparing this food with consciousness? So you may want to check. Now, I don't want to disturb all the live food restaurants or vegan restaurants, but it's a valid question. Are the people preparing the food with consciousness and love? As you're eating, their vibration as well. Next slide, please. And water, I mentioned. Reverse osmosis is good. Restructured water good, which is distilled. Distilled water by itself has some detox advantages, but it also leaches out all your minerals. So that's the downside to the distilled water concept. Next slide, please. Now, as part of this longevity, okay, the idea is creating a quiet mind with meditation and prayer. And what do we know about that? Well, we know that when people meditate, have been meditating even 20 minutes a day for 5 years, they actually have a physiology that's as much as 15 years younger. That is a very important statement. So we know that meditation does that. Meditation changes the brain. It actually increases brain size. Fasting, meditation, also not only increase brain size, but increase brain function and neuronal growth. But I did say faster. In fact, fasting has been shown to increase brain size by 1%, and also stimulates certain hormones, brain-derived neurotropic factor, for example, and the human growth factor, that actually increase brain size, but also increase the production of neurons. So all these things are really going on. The brain used to thought, oh, we can't change it, it's just going to waste away. No, not true. around the age of 60, if you aren't doing things to build your brain function, build your brain size, and what are those things? Fasting, okay? And I'll just mention, not only just with detox, but fasting actually does build your brain size. We are having a fast in the Dominican Republic at June 1st. So everybody's invited to that, but it also builds your brain, increases neuron production, increases neurotropic hormones. It's a good deal. And it also increases stem cells that are specifically goes into neurons. So we can build our brain. That's the point I'm making. We can rejuvenate it and build it. Prayer also helps with that. I mentioned mantra repetition, which is a form of prayer, and also chanting. They all develop a quiet mind, but they do more than that. They actually really do rebuild and expand brain size. Next slide, please. So, as Thomas Edison said, the chief function of the body is to carry the brain around. And he's right to a certain extent. I mean, the brain is the key that we want to protect and expand. And everything we're talking about is to improve brain function. And as I say in our next talk, I'm going to focus mostly on supplements and a diet that supports brain growth and function. Next slide, please. So here we are, there's the brain. And if we look closely at that, we have the frontal lobes, which are what tend to shrink with age, that are associated with senility and cognitive decline, and which has been shown to reverse with one example is meditation, but a healthy diet. So you can improve your brain size and your brain function, and particularly the frontal lobes. I'll also tell you it can increase with exercise. And you saw me with the dance, so there is some evidence that dancing, which is obviously a form of exercise, right? That dancing can improve frontal brain function, cognition, clarity of mind, balance, overall frontal lobe processing. That's all been shown in research, as well as decreasing, as I mentioned, anxiety and depression. So it's good. Dancing is a good thing. I love the dance, but just because I love it, the dance doesn't mean you should do it. I'm telling you the good reasons why you should do it. One of the things in longevity is to get longer. What do I mean by that? Well, when we're moving, when we're exercising, and when we're dancing, we're lengthening the spine. And we're lubricating the spine. And as you lengthen and elongate the spine, in between each spinal process, without going into too much anatomy, there are nerves and arteries, lymphatics, feeding the system, the muscle systems, the nervous system, and so forth. And when the spine is compressed, which tends to happen with age, if you aren't paying attention, I didn't say it happens with age, I say tends to happen with age, very different, okay? And that longevity is an anti-aging effect. So the flexibility of the spine, but there's another piece to it here. Something I learned about 40 years ago. When somebody was doing the first came to America was teaching the Alexander technique. What it is a way of lengthening and widening the spine. Now, there are different techniques out there, but that's the concept at this point. So literally, you make the spine longer, and that is called longer longevity, because everything works better when it's longer. If you notice, people who aren't paying attention, you often see them slumped over, heads bent. Okay? That is not only keeping your heart from working right, and also not giving you enough oxygen in your lungs, but it's compressing all your nerves. So good posture, and if you need to do, some people working on you to create that longevity, lengthening longevity, elongating the spine, it actually is an important part of longevity because everything works better. It's pretty straightforward. Also, it feels good to have that flow of energy going up. So it's important to keep our postural awareness, is what I'm saying, really part of the whole longevity process. So I bring that up for people to do it. It's pretty easy to do, okay? Next slide, please. Okay, I mentioned how the frontal lobe is activated. It's activated by prayer and attention, meditation, and that it shrinks with age, with mental loss, decreased mental functioning. So when we're dancing, we're turning that around a little bit. But that's the important kind of thing that we're talking about. I'm not going to go into other brain parts except that when we meditate, the parietal lobes, which hold a sense of separation, are kind of nullified a little bit. And we can have a better connection with God. We go into non-duality. Okay, next slide, please. So meditation had several really interesting studies at Harvard showed it could rebuild the brain matter in as short as 8 weeks. Now, that's what I'm talking about. Next slide. And it rebuilds the brain matter, particularly the frontal lobes. Now, I've mentioned about exercise. It's good strength, it's cardiovascular health, flexibility, spinal flexibility, lengthening, balance, which is extremely important. That's why the dancing is more with the balance. And in general, movement. Now, they point out that it's really good for Parkinson's and senility in general because it helps the brain-mind interface and the brain-body interface. It's very integrative, what I'm saying. But there's really more to it, and it has to do with the flow of the nervous system, the muscular system in the brain. It reactivates that flow because it takes that attention. And so it reconnects all the pieces as if you're younger. And as I said, the research shows that it improves cognition and decreases the rate, doesn't stop it necessarily, the rate of Alzheimer's progression and also Parkinson's. So exercise also increases brain size. It increases, as a strength, and that's why it is important to do regular exercise. The research suggests if you're, depending on the research, 4 to 5 times a week 20, 30 minutes, you're going to get very, very optimal support of brain function, body function, organ function, and actually spinal mobility. So I bring those points out to you. Again, with age, we want to be more tuned in to our balance and our coordination. Exercise can help with that. That's what dancing is. I like because it's easy, you can do it, and it does all those things because it takes a lot more coordination to do, good dancing. Okay, next slide, please. If we do not get adequate sleep, which is 7 to 8 hours a night, usually at least 2 hours before midnight, it ages the whole system, and it's a time when the brain regenerates. Think what I just said. It's a time when the brain itself can regenerate. And that's really very important to understand. It's like, yeah, I want to regenerate my brain. Well, you have to sleep it. And going to bed at 2 a.m. doesn't quite do it. So that's an important piece there to be aware of. And when people go without sleep, they definitely disturb the nervous system, disturb the thinking process, and really accelerate the aging process, particularly of the brain. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now we'll talk about food a little bit because it is a love note from God. But I wanted to get in these other aspects here for us. Okay, next slide. Now, when we eat an animal, we're creating death, pain, and misery, and we bring that into ourselves because that's the consciousness that the animal feels. In holistic veganism, where we're looking at how we eat in a way that upgrades the quality of all life on the planet and of the living planet as well as our own life, okay? And we're creating a sanctification and holiness for ourselves in the act of eating. And that is huge. Now, we know that in most traditions, not all, but most traditions, that the most religious traditions, that veganism is the prescribed diet. I didn't say necessarily live food veganisms. It could be the core of the ancient Essenes did that, but generally veganism. So that's like the cutting off point, right? Veganism is the diet that most traditions, and I'm going to also say, including the Bible, you can say, well, yeah, but Moses wanted the people to be vegan and they rebelled. With Noah, again, it was the same thing. They couldn't hold it for a very long time. But the other teachers and prophets are saying that in the end of the age, which is where we may be at, before the 1,000 years of peace, the world will become vegan as part of their transition and readiness. Now, I don't have a crystal ball with that, but the ancient Essenes 2,000 years ago predicted that on the first day of Pesach, which is next week, it's this year, 2025, we will enter a process towards 1,000 years of peace, of about 75 years. So it's even more important than ever that we move in this direction. Now, I'm going to give you a bunch of reasons why it's good to be vegan, but I'm saying there's a bigger picture here. It uplifts the quality of life for the whole living planet and the planet itself. Next slide. So here are some of the reasons. When you eat lower on the food chain, which is what vegan is, you're not getting the toxic pesticide, the 96% of the toxic pesticides and herbicides you get when you're eating meat. Now that's just a short list, and there are many reasons. So it preserves the germ cell, which is the reproductive, the sperm in the ovum, so we can have healthy children. It's a big deal these days because there's so much toxicity. Each person on the average has about 56 serious toxins. I did some research as I was exploring the effect of fasting on the detox, and I had 70 people, and they had an average of at least 26 measurable toxins in their system. And we started with a 1-week fast, and we had a significant reduction in the toxins, but not complete, okay? There is still maybe approximately 20% toxins in people. And then we did a second week, and 0, no toxins left. Well, that's pretty significant. I was pretty impressed that we could get, I'm talking about lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, all the variety of pesticides and herbicides. I mean, the full range of toxins, including some radioactive atoms as well. So it's like, wow, fasting stimulates the body's ability to release the toxins from the cells and ultimately from the system. Now I kind of looked at it in different ways, and basically what I found is if people fast for a week twice a year, they're going to continually go to 0 in terms of the toxins in the system. And that's pretty significant. Okay, now the holistic veganism, people who are vegans, they live the longest, and they have less heart disease and cancer of all sorts, neurological disease, more vitality. There's good research on that. So it preserves personal health, which is pretty important. There's enough food when you use this feeding vegan to feed everybody in the world rather than people going hungry. The data is a little variable, but we're looking at about 44,000 people starving to death each day. It obviously protects against animal cruelty. It preserves the ecology because it only takes about 15% of the land versus the animal, 6% of the land versus the animal ecology taking maybe 60 to 80% of the land. It protects the mind because you're not getting all those pesticides and herbicides. That's pretty important. So next slide, please. And it helps us become sovereign. We have a working mind. Okay, in a yogic world, I'm not going to do all these, but the yama niyamas, which are essentially the 10 commandments, were fulfilled with the vegan diet. Okay, then we have inner peace, and then in the yogic system, we have kind of subtle energetic body. There's 72,000 nadis. These are channels and koshas, and when those are cleared of the toxins, it helps us become superconductors of the divine, which is very, very special experience. And for that reason, it's the diet that's most associated with spirituality and enlightenment and basically all the traditions. So it's a very winning diet, besides just for your personal health. Next slide, please. Now, when I talk about peace with the body, I've kind of looked, and this is some of my diabetes research, but your blood sugar is a big, important part of peace with the body. And the American Diabetic Association, on their diet, people start at 160 in their research, and they, after 3 weeks, they get it down to 125, which is, for diabetes, you want it at least at 100. That's a non-diabetic, below 100. And Bernard's research, they started fasting blood sugar of 163, and on his diet, they, after like 22 weeks, I didn't say it right, the ADA diet was 22 weeks also, he got it down to 128. And they lost 12.7 pounds, and a 46% reduction in medications. Now, in just 3 weeks in my program, with the average blood sugar, 247, that's how people came in with the diabetes. I picked some really, on purpose, sick people. 3 weeks, their blood sugars on the average was 86. That's totally healthy blood sugar. They lost 18 pounds, and they were 97% off all medications. So that's a dramatic difference with a full vegan diet. Okay? Bernard's isn't a full vegan diet. So we looked at my program, and the non-insulin dependent diabetics, in 3 weeks, were off all medication. Usually it happens in a week to 10 days, with a 61% cure rate at 3 weeks. And the cure rate gets higher over time, okay? And 86.4% were off all medications, and we had a 24% cure rate. That's people really on insulin, who are insulin dependent. 3 weeks, it gets better in time. Now, the surprising thing is, there's some type 1 diabetics got into the program by accident, but by design. It was interesting. 31% of them, 31.4, were actually able to come off insulin, and they had a 21% cure rate for their type 1 diabetes. Now, this is a hospital doctor diagnosed type 1. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole explanation. I'm just trying to make a point of how this potency of this diet works. Next slide, please. Okay, so part of it is we individualize your diet. We are unique beings. Next slide. And without explaining it, this is the Ayurvedic system, that there's 7 types, and each type, they have animal prototypes. The kapha is, all the babies are kind of kapha and watery and plump, and then pitta is teenagers, the fiery teenagers, and vata is what we see with age. So those are life cycle, but people are also born with constitutions that reflect those parts. Okay, and it's very important you eat to balance your doshas. Next slide, please. Okay, now taking this a step further, in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition, 2013, they did a meta-analysis, okay, and there were some genetic variations, and they found that chromosome 19 had the part that told you what food you should eat, what's best for you. So they basically made the point that we really do have, we're not a bunch of cows, okay? And we do have some real genetic variations of what's the optimum diet. And that's the key point I'm making. We're not, again, a bunch of cows, and we do have genetic variations. Next slide, please. And so just keeping that in mind, we're not going to go into how to figure all that out. I have that in my books. I'm happy to talk about it. So what I'm saying also is diet affects consciousness. And we, in the Ayurvedic system, that's clearly out there. A diet that's called the sattvic diet that helps you meditate and have a clear mind. Rajasic diet is more kind of for the warrior, and tamas is kind of the junk food, drug-based kind of diet that a lot of people in America are on. And it affects your consciousness. Next slide. So one of the diets we talk about is the vegan live food diet. And I'm going to go over it quickly here. But when people go to the live food, that's at least 80%. There's an 87% improvement in emotional balance, mental clarity, and spiritual inspiration. So obviously diet affects consciousness. 400% decrease in depression, which is extremely important when you realize how many people, maybe 50% of the population in America has depression. 300% decrease in anxiety, and then addiction. And I'm going to say there's a definite increase in energy levels, like a 300% increase. Next slide. And moving to no chronic disease. Okay, and we have a 200% increase in men's comfort, 245% decrease in constipation. Obviously, if constipation is less, then you don't need laxatives. And over a 200% increase in energy. Next slide. Now, I just want to, I'm not going to show all the pictures, but I just want people to understand this is a cabbage leaf. The one on top is cooked, and the one below is raw. And you can see the energy. That energy is a living field that's lost when you cook it. Next slide. Okay, and this is a sprout. And you see why we like sprouts so much. They're so good for you. Next slide. And this is a thing called pure synergy. And what we're looking at basically is when we do the live food, there's more energy coming from the food. The food goes through the bowels a lot quicker, so you don't have toxin buildup. It's more alkalizing and mineralizing. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. And you can see even the seeds. This is an organic seed up top versus a commercial seed. There's a big difference. Now, I have been teaching it, cooked food overactivates the exhausted immune system, but some of my master students have actually found that's not the case. So I'm putting it up there to make a point that it's not the case. Okay? The key is it transfers the outer light from the sunlight to the leaves into us, and it takes the sunlight from the outer light into the inner light. And it's because we get filled with inner light from this diet, it's the best for optimizing spiritual life. Okay, next slide. And this is just a lemon, and you can just see the energy. And that's all I really wanted you to get from that. If there's a lot of energy, we're going to flip through the next slide, just go through them. Okay, keep going. That's a sprout, another sprout. And this is cacao. And you can see it's got a tremendous amount of energy. Okay, next slide. Okay, here's the same person. On the left, he's eating good organic live food, and on the right, for sake of experiment, is eating a junk food diet. There's just no feel. Those are fingerprints. There's no feel coming out of them. So it really does make a difference in our biofield. Next slide. So, as Ralph Waldo Emerson says, I was taken by surprise by any new example of common sense. That's what we're talking about. Next slide. So a vegan life of diet is common sense. Now we bring up the question of protein. This is a common question. Can I get enough protein? My answer is yes. For about 50 years, I've been helping people transition to a vegan life of diet, and only one person who happens to be from the Arctic Circle who needed to have some animal protein about once a week, and I'm sure there's a genetic point to that. Next slide, please. Now, we do have a variation, as I explained. About 70% need a little higher protein, and 30% need around 35 grams. Don't need that much. Next slide. Okay, you can get adequate protein. Next slide. Now, here's the problem with you can get adequate protein. You see, that's very high in protein, but that's a lot to eat. So we have a little bit of an issue there. Next slide. So this tells you, look, spinach is 49% protein, kale's 45. Okay, that sounds really good, right? Beef is only 25.8%, chicken's 23, eggs are 12% protein. But what's the difference? The beef and chicken and eggs are concentrated protein and much easier. Whereas the vegetables, they're bigger. It's a lot to eat. So that causes a little bit of a problem until you figure it out. And what we do is use concentrated proteins sources. Spirulina, chlorella. Spirulina and chlorella are about 70% protein and about 95% assimilated. 1 or 2 tablespoons twice a day generally will give people all the protein they need. That's how easy it is. Next slide. Fish, tuna is 29% protein, still not really up there. Next slide. Okay, so what's another source of protein? But I think there's much more to nuts and seeds than just protein. Next slide. So they did a study about longevity. Actually, this is what the talk is about. And if you eat nuts, you live longer. Well, okay, what does that mean? Basically, generally people eat nuts have a 7% reduced risk of death. If you eat nuts once a week, it's 11% reduced. It's 2 to 4 times a week, it's 13%. If you're eating nuts and seeds like I do every day, that's a 20% reduced death risk. So, eating more nuts and seeds is linked to lower risk of cancer, heart disease, respiratory disease, and really diabetes as well. And this is in the New England Journal of Medicine. So the answer is right there. That's a huge study, 30 years, 119,000 people. Wow. Yes, I don't use roasted nuts. It's destroyed. Raw nuts and seeds are what I do. When you're cooking them, it's a big problem. Like to soak them, pull out any toxins, soak them 15 minutes, and then you can eat them. And I also soak them with hydrogen peroxide to get anything that fungus or whatever may be on the nuts, particularly with walnuts. Okay? So, maybe 8 to 16 walnuts, that kind of thing. Now, what about fat? That seems to get people confused. And next slide. So let's go a little closer. Obviously, milk is 54 saturated fat. Next slide. Now, we get a lot of fear of fat. And I'm going to debunk that a little bit. okay? So the diet I generally recommend, okay, is 25 to 45% fat. And that's plant-based fat, not animal fat, which is not good for you and is somewhat toxic. We have to make that distinction when we use the word fat. And a relatively low carbohydrate diet, 25 to 35%. And as a person who specializes a lot in diabetes, I see that that is by far the healthiest. In certain longevity studies, again, a moderately low carbohydrate diet is the best because it doesn't overstimulate insulin production, which is anti-aging. So this is a talk on longevity, so that's why that's important to make that point. Now, triglycerides are a danger to people, not so much cholesterol. And you see on the diet that I recommend, which is the full vegan diet, no milk, fish, cheese, any of that, that's really a good triglyceride. Less than 100 is really good. And cholesterol, 159. I basically show that 160 or less, 159, 160, it is the minimum level of cholesterol you need. Now, so what I have for vegan fat, we have nuts, seeds, avocado, which I have regularly, olives. So those are kind of where the sources of fats are. And okay, next slide. So as we're winding this down, I'll go into cholesterol because people worry about it. 21 studies. A meta-analysis means you combine all the studies into one. 340,000 adults. And this is the key. No difference in risk of heart disease between the people with the lowest or highest intake of saturated fat. So I'm kind of saying, if you're doing organic plant fat, I don't think you need to worry too much. Next slide. And then they did another study, Archives of Internal Medicine, 2009. And the results, next slide. No evidence to support the widespread mythical belief that limiting saturated fat is beneficial or protective for heart health and longevity. And that's after many years. Next slide. And now we look at something even more important, that with age, they did so with elderly people in the Netherlands, 89 years is the average age. For every 39-point increase in total cholesterol, there was a decrease in mortality. I would also say there was an increase in cognitive ability. So the cholesterol actually helps brain function, particularly more with age, and decreases mortality risk. Next slide. So, it's also associated with better memory. Next slide. So, I just made the point, people with higher cholesterol score better on cognitive tests. Next slide. So, and this is a really important study because it's kind of mind-blowing. 52,287 people between ages of 20 and 74. Women with a cholesterol of 270. That seems high, right? Had a 28% lower mortality rate. Wearing out my voice. Okay. That woman with cholesterol of less than 193. That's a pretty strong statement. A cholesterol of 270 with a 28% lower mortality. That's impressive to me. Next slide. So, what am I saying? There's no evidence to support the mythical belief that limiting saturated fat intake is beneficial or protective for heart health and longevity. Now, what I will tell you is I'm a slow oxidizer, so too much fat or too much protein doesn't work well for me, and I have to have a certain amount of complex carbohydrates to balance it. So I don't eat a lot of fat. I'm not pushing fat, but I'm making a point. And if you're really needing fat, there's a good suggestion that you're a fast oxidizer and it's helping you. Next slide. Now, low cholesterol is the danger. Not a goal, it's a danger. And I knew that in medical school 50 years ago. We were taught low cholesterol increases depression and suicide. Okay, and it does. Next slide. So those with low cholesterol had more than 6 times the risk of committing suicide. So low cholesterol is less than 150, 159. But I'm going to say at 150, 140, you should be concerned. Next slide. And low cholesterol is associated, obviously, with emotional imbalance, depression, suicide. You need cholesterol to make your brain work. Violent behavior, stroke, memory loss. So it's really important. Next slide. So risk of suicide, again, it's doubled if you're in the lower, it's 25%. Next slide. So let's go one more slide down. So what is associated with increased emotional imbalances, depression, suicide, violent behavior. Next slide. So fat, not carbohydrate, is the preferred fuel. And that's actually in prehistoric times too. There's a lot of fat out there. Next slide. So carbohydrates. Next slide. Trans fats aren't so good, but high carbohydrate isn't so good because it stimulates insulin, and insulin accelerates aging. Next slide. Now, along with this, I'm going to mention fructose because a lot of people think that's okay. It isn't okay. Okay, it's associated with causing diabetes, brain inflammation. You'll see in a second. Next slide. It's metabolized in the liver. It's associated with non-alcoholic fatty liver degeneration. Next slide. Cancer cells use fructose 10 times more actively than glucose, so it's a better food. Cancer cells love fructose. I'll put it that way. Next slide. And it inflames the brain cells, the glia cells of the brain. Next slide. And basically, people are getting way too much fructose in the diet. Safe is 15 to 25 grams of fructose per day. Next slide. So let's look at what it's associated with. Next slide. Heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, gout, kidney stones, non-alcoholic fatty liver, brain inflammation, which is a big deal, cancer, accelerated aging. Okay, next slide. So it's not really good. So here's what I recommend in general for everybody, and work on this diet out for yourself. 25 to 45% organic plant fat. You know, somebody like me, I'm around 30%, and 10 to 20% plant protein. I'm about 15%. And I'm closer to 30, 35% of carbohydrate. Now, the carbohydrate are leafy greens. I don't really eat anything other than that for my carbohydrates. Next slide. So the optimum diet. And here's the question you have to answer to yourself. People ask me, what's the optimum diet? So the answer is, it optimally supports your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual life. It helps you become a superconductor of the divine. So that's how we get clarity on the optimal diet. So with that, I'm going to close. I bless everybody that we are inspired to move towards in a sense, the optimum diet for our daily life and for longevity. And I'm going to just say that may you be blessed that you find a diet that's not only good for you right now in this moment, but continues into the longevity paradigm. So it's supporting both. Okay, peace be with you, and it's nice to share with you. I
Thank you
have
so
lots of
much, Dr.
programs on the
Cousens.
internet, and
Thank you,
you can,
Dr. Cousens.
yeah, good.
Fantastic information. Thank you so much. Um, so I really appreciate, and we all really appreciate you spending the last 50 years gathering this information and providing us information that really is difficult to get. I mean, it's just, I search for speakers all over, and there's very few that speak about the things you speak about or have your background and knowledge. So this was really wonderful, and we really appreciate it. I do have,
Thank you for your good feedback.
thank you.
Nice.
I do have a number of questions. It probably would be best to give rather fast answers so we could cover a lot of things that you just spoke about. And probably better to give a shorter answer so we could get to as many of them as possible. Okay?
I'll try.
Okay. Okay. So
Good.
the real truth about health is supposed to help us to get clarity about what to do. However, we have very smart, very credentialed speakers saying different things. So I want to clarify some of the things that you're saying that are different than what other people are saying. So see
Right.
if you could help us understand how you're coming to a conclusion that is different than someone else. So the first thing that jumps out for everyone, virtually across the board, is we've been told by virtually everyone that we want to lower cholesterol, but not only that, that a whole food plant-based diet will almost in all cases lead to a cholesterol below 159. So I'm not really, when you say that ideally it would be better, that it's better in a bunch of ways to be above 159, yet you're saying to eat nuts, seeds, and greens, and avocados, which are foods that we think will almost automatically make us below 150. How are we supposed to have a cholesterol of 159 on the diet that you're recommending, which appears to be one that would lower it below that?
It's a great question. But cholesterol is made a lot in the liver, maybe 80%. And so what we have to look at is changing our physiology to support liver cholesterol production. Uh, that's a short answer, okay? But it's worth thinking about because it doesn't really come so much from our diet, particularly for vegans.
So just to go a little further on that one then, so what would we do to make our liver work effectively to produce the proper amount of cholesterol?
Okay, so we are unique individuals, and that's what makes it a little difficult. So um, I would tend to look for a diet that's going to have a little bit more triglycerides in it, which that's something we take because they're connected with cholesterol in different ways. It's not so easy, and we have to kind of explore because we're all a little different. That's the problem. We want a straight, this one answer for everyone. It just doesn't work that way. And that's why I say you have to find a diet that makes you feel really good all the time, at any age, at any time. And we have to do a little exploration for that. That's how I would talk about it. Now, there's one other thing that's really important here. I rarely ever look at cholesterol for myself. Okay, why? Hey, I'm healthy, my mind's working, I'm 82 years old around the planet. It's like I'm strong, I'm flexible, all these things are happening. I'm not going to worry if whatever that number is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think that we have to get beyond looking at lab results for the whole picture. We do need to look at triglycerides, okay, but cholesterol isn't as important as we think it is, one way or the other. So like worrying about cholesterol, and I think there's more and more research that's coming out that's saying that cholesterol is really not such a big deal. Don't worry about it. There are other things in a diet that you really do need to worry about. but we want our liver to be producing, adequate amounts of cholesterol. How do you tell? You change your diet, and keep your outer input the same and see how it improves or doesn't improve that. If that makes sense.
Okay. Now, even though there was a lot of detail, in the end, if I interpret this right, I heard you say that our diet should be greens, vegetables, nuts and seeds, and avocados. Did I interpret it right? Is there more to it?
Almost, but I have goji berries.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of fruit, but I have a little bit. The three fruits that are good are goji berries, blueberries, which are terrific for your brain, and green apples. So those have been proven not to raise your blood sugar. Remember, my focus is diabetes here. Not to raise your blood sugar and be good for you. Blueberries are outstanding, for neurotransmitters and all the things it do for your brain.
So so aside from the berry part, though, when it comes to lunch and dinner for the next 365 days, more or less, though, you're saying go and buy the best quality organic greens and vegetables raw, and seeds and nuts raw, and avocados, and some combination of
And
those and
olives.
olives, maybe with some lemon, and that is the diet. It's the seeds, it's the nuts, and it's lots of greens. Is that, am I simplifying, or is that what you're
No,
saying?
no, no. You have a good understanding here. It's good. So we also have to look at one really important thing: results. So here am I eating this way for the last 40 years, 50 years really, but you know. And here I am at 82. And as you know, I do, like I did today, 1,600 push-ups and, thousands of sit-ups. And in other words, it's working for me. Now, am I an exception? I don't think so. But I have tested this and it works. Now, there are other people who have tested and it also works for them. Okay? And we have to look at, well, does it work or doesn't? If you're a diet that's making you sick, don't stay on it. I mean, give it 3 months to do your detox. Then you have to adjust it, and we're a little different. I'm more of a slow oxidizer. I don't need a lot of fat. It's harder for me. Okay, I don't actually need that much protein, so I'm having the vegetables like we just talked about. Somebody else needs more protein, and if they don't get it, they don't feel healthy.
But
So
when
you
you,
have to trust yourself, is what I'm saying.
but when you talk about more protein or more fat, the inputs that we're playing with are vegetables, mostly green, sprouts, nuts, seeds, and avocados and olives. Are there, regardless of whether you say more,
Spirulina, chlorella, blue-green algae, very high in protein.
okay.
Higher than anything on the planet, as far as I can tell.
Okay, so those three things, but mainly, lots of, you're saying we need to retrain our brains to think of sprouts and green vegetables as the steak, as the main thing to replace even cooked beans, that this is filling enough, healthy enough, and even though most of us are not conditioned to think of kale and dandelion and sprouts, that those actually are the protein that would take us for the next year and fill us?
Right. Um, and again, I want to emphasize the spirulina, chlorella, and blue-green algae as being the highest quality protein probably on the planet, with very, very low toxicity, compared to meat, fish, chicken, and dairy. And so what I'm saying is that you need to, according to who you are, needed to maybe take 2 tablespoons with each meal, or 3, or 1.
Right.
You know,
So just to summarize again, you're saying it's green leafy vegetables, it's nuts, seeds, avocados, olives, seeds, nuts, and if needed, and spirulina, blue-green algae, and chlorella. That is more or less, not more or less, that is what you're saying we
exactly. So, for example, I don't need much protein. I will have a tablespoon of the blue-green algae is part of my daily intake. Some people need 6 tablespoons because there's that much variation.
Okay. And then, okay, so that's the diet. Now, one thing quickly, just to be clear, you said, did you really say that you did 1,600 push-ups today? I mean, what do you call a push-up? Because in my world, no one,
Standard portion.
no one in my world does 1,600 a day. So can you
Yeah,
just,
but I am in your world. Take that
so
back. I'm in,
how many do you do at a time? How many sets? I mean, it sounds a
oh,
lot.
no. I just do it all at once. I do my yoga, and every other day, because you have to recover. Every other day, I'm right now at 1,600. I'll probably go to, I've done 2,000, but it really stresses. So 1,600 is a moderate stress. That's why I picked that number.
And when you say 1,600, do you go down to the floor and do 16 sets of 100, or do you do 1,600 straight? What are you saying, actually?
Just do it straight.
1,600 straight push-ups?
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds phenomenal, incredible. Okay. Another thing you're saying is you're saying,
I'm doing it not to brag. I'm trying to say on this
yeah,
diet, you can be strong. That's really what I'm saying.
okay. Okay. Now you also said that cancer cells use fructose 10 times more. Okay, so that would make us think that we shouldn't eat fruit, and at the same time, you're saying berries are good for the brain. So, and then again, a lot of us are going to listen to Brian Clement, who's saying don't eat fruit at all. It feeds yeast, mold, fungus, cancer, candida. So we don't want a disease. We want our brains to work. We like the way berries taste. Can you give us the most clear answer on guidance for berries or other fruits?
So first of all, I really understand where Brian's coming from, and I don't really disagree. He does run a cancer clinic. It's more than a cancer clinic, but that's a big piece. And if I were him, I would not support eating any fruit. Okay?
Okay.
So I get it. But I'm not him, and I'm not running a clinic that's mostly treating cancer. And for thousands of years, people have had some fruit. Now, when I'm talking about a little bit of goji berries, and the little blueberries, it's not like gobs of fruit. Okay, so we have to keep it in perspective. So, like the goji berries are associated with in the Chinese medicine with longevity. People living more than 100 years are actually extreme longevity. So you're talking about something that's really good for your longevity, and you're not going to eat it because it's a fruit, because you're going to eat a little bit. There has to be perspective. So if you're running a cancer clinic, that's the right perspective. But if you're living everyday life, then you have a different perspective. And a little bit of goji berries and blueberries, which are known for how good they are for the brain, a little bit of that. I'm not saying you're eating it all 3 meals or all 2 meals. You're having a little bit. You're having 3 tablespoons of goji berries. That's it. You see what I'm trying to point I'm making? It's not like it's your main course. It's just like you're having a little bit. It's almost a condiment.
When you say goji berries, you mean dried goji berries.
Yeah, I soak them in warm water because I like them to to hydrate.
Okay.
But the research shows the Chinese, longevity medicine type thing, they're essential. They're an essential part of their longevity protocols. And
Okay.
since we're talking about longevity, I'm not going to ignore that. And blueberries are really good for the brain. I'm not going to throw that away because I'm not treating cancer here. We're taking a little bit, everything has its measure, and that's an important thing. I'm not saying have that at all 3 meals. I'm having a little bit. 3 tablespoons is not a whole lot. Do you see the difference?
Yes.
And it's a perspective difference.
Okay. The other night, Dr. Furman spoke last night, the night before, and I really think he's terrific. He's really love listening to him speak. He does tons of research. He's very confident. And he seems to feel unequivocally that that salt does not support our health. That we're not supposed to be trying to get salt. We're trying to I don't want to put words in his mouth, but my understanding of what he's saying is we certainly don't want to add salt. We're trying to eliminate it. Now you're saying to some people, take a teaspoon and a half a day of salt, and that it's part of their health. So why are you feeling confident that we want to add salt where half of the country is saying it causes strokes and heart attacks, and someone is credentialed as Dr. Furman is saying, yeah, you don't want salt. So what do you want us to do, all of us, regarding salt? Should we be trying? And I understand we're talking about a super high quality mineral salt, not the regular table salt. But what should our perspective on salt be, and what is your opinion based on?
Okay, you're asking a really good question. Okay, let's first distinguish, as you began to do. I can't tell you exactly what Dr. Furman is talking about, but I think it's table salt. Okay, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I totally agree with him. It's not good for you. Okay, so let's start with that. There's an agreement that table salt isn't good. I am talking about 82 mineral salt harvested, from places where there are no contaminants. Okay, when I'm talking about sea salt, okay, I'm talking about where there are no contaminants. So we're looking at, I'm not going to use a product name here, but we're looking at salt that basically is contaminant free, 82 minerals. We need all those minerals. And I may not be totally accurate on this, but what I am saying is about 82% of the public or 88% of the public is deficient in basic minerals. Okay, now the next kind of part of that is, why do you need 82 different minerals to be healthy? And why is it that a high percentage of the population is mineral deficient, and we begin to get to a different way of thinking about it? Because if you're not replacing the minerals, what are you doing? So that's another piece. Now, we also need salt to hydrate. Most Americans are dehydrated. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's a very high percentage. So when you have 82 mineral salt, you're holding water. And that holding of water helps you stop being dehydrated. So that's another really important piece of the thing, is that dehydration is not good for you. Now, the research, even with sodium chloride, which is the salt I believe he's talking about, but doesn't matter, shows at least 50% of the population is not affected by, in terms of heart disease, by sodium chloride. Okay, but what I am saying is a full-bodied salt that's 82 minerals, I want to see some research that shows that that's bad for you. Because I believe what he's talking about is sodium chloride. Okay, you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't mind being wrong here, but that's my understanding. So I am talking about food here. I'm talking about people have had for thousands of years. You're worth your salt. Where'd that come from? The Romans, they got paid in salt. They were pretty fierce warriors. So what I'm trying to say is, we have to talk about what we mean by salt. And I'm talking about a full 82 mineral salt that's harvested in a place that there aren't contaminants. That's not synthetic. And I think that's a very different thing than the research on sodium chloride, which isn't good for you.
So you're saying that if someone had this high quality salt, a teaspoon and a half a day, you feel that this in no way is increasing their risk of stroke or heart attack?
Absolutely.
Okay. Dr. Cousens, if we were told the other night, one of the what Brenda Davis I think was saying, which made a lot of sense, is and I think Dr. Furman too, was this just that being overweight puts you at a higher risk of health issues. So if you have two healthy vegans and one of them is 15 pounds above their ideal weight and one isn't, even though they're eating a similar diet, the one who's heavier has more risk. So the question is, if we are uh, eating the diet you're recommending and doing it very well, and our blood sugar or our weight is above the ideal amount, but we're already eating your diet and your lifestyle, um, do we need to care? Like if our blood sugar is 108 and our weight is, 10 pounds above what's considered ideal, but we're doing not virtually, we're doing what you're saying. At that point, should we stop looking at blood sugar and weight, or should we focus more and try to cut the fat down and do more to get those two numbers down?
This is a good question. I'm going to answer it in a little bit different way. Okay. If your blood sugar is off, it needs to be less than 100. Okay? Between 100 and 125 is prediabetes. So I like to have people's blood sugar less than 100. So I will do whatever I need to do to help them get there. Okay? Lots of different options, but I'm just trying to explain 100 is the cutoff point. The healthy blood sugar is 70 to 85. That's the optimum blood sugar. But 100 is good. You don't get, it's not prediabetes. So I hope that answers that part of it. Okay. Now, I think the other issue, I think we don't want to be extreme, and generally, if someone's on a vegan diet, they're really not going to be overweight. If they are, there is another problem, thyroid problem, some sort of hypothalamus pituitary. There's some sort of hormonal imbalance. So I wouldn't focus on the diet as the problem. It's really, really hard to be overweight on a vegan diet. I mean, you have to be an obsessive eater, or you have some hormonal thing. So I would look at the hormonal thing first before I proceeded any further. Does that make sense?
Yes. What if your blood sugar is high? What are the levers that you could use? There's diet, there's more exercise. Like, what other levers do you have to help with blood sugar?
Exercise actually is overrated. The research does not show it really makes a difference. It may make a temporary difference, okay? So it's not really a good thing. I am looking at the blood sugar cycle, and I'm not just looking at insulin. I'm talking about liver secretions that affect blood sugar, liver production. Liver produces sugar, okay? So I'm going to look at liver function. And then I'm going to look at the hypothalamus pituitary pineal axis. And I'm going to look at thyroid. So do you see what I'm trying to say here? Is that often there's a hormonal imbalance that can create like a weight type gain. So diet wouldn't be the first thing. I mean, I would look at it, but if somebody's on this diet, I'm saying there's something wrong on their physiology because this diet doesn't normally produce that.
So how should everyone who's listening approach diagnosing their health? There's blood tests, there's urine tests, there's stool tests, there's hair analysis, there's saliva tests, there's hair breath, and then when you get the test results, it very often, or maybe always, says that you have too much or too little of something. Then you speak to a health practitioner who says, here's a list of 20 different supplements. Now, we don't know what's going on. We don't know which supplements to trust or which health practitioner to trust. We don't know which test to trust. We're not even sure if we should be doing this. And most people are not financially feeling good about having expensive consultations and expensive supplements. What should we do about this?
First thing is I would do is I get retested to see if it was accurate, because they're only about 85% accurate.
Well,
Seriously,
which
that's
test
what I
are you,
would do. If there's really something off, I would retest it to
which
see if
test
it
are you
repeats
speaking about?
itself. What?
Which test are you referring to? There's so many people could do.
Well, no, whatever test is showing that they have an imbalance. Do you understand what I'm saying? If somebody has a high magnesium, okay, or you're worried about high this or that, you want to retest to see if it repeats itself.
Dr. Campbell. Sorry, 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, you able to sign in?
While you're out there, I just want to thank you for your good work in setting up this
Hold
whole.
on 1 second. I'm not going yet.
Good.
I'm gonna have
Okay.
it for you right now, okay? I'm sorry, I just have to, our next speaker, I just want to get straight with the text, so
I just was thanking you for setting up this conference. I think you do a really good job.
okay. So again, the question is a little bit like, should we get any of those tests? Thank you, Dr. Cousens. I appreciate it. But with a little time, I want to squeeze the questions in. So, which of these tests should we be getting in the first place? And then based on what they say, if you retest it, what do you want us to do about the supplement thing? Again, a lot of people are saying, I don't have time to, so what tests should we get of the blood, urine, stool, hair, breath, saliva test? And then assuming there are shortages and deficiencies and too much, what do we do? How do we deal with figuring out what to get, what supplements? How do we approach this?
It's a very complicated question in a certain way. For example, hair tests. There's all kinds of things you see in hair tests, but according to Gary Gordon, who really started hair testing in California many years ago, the only tests we're checking are the heavy metals. Okay? So the very first thing I would do is, wow, let's pay attention to that. Let's repeat the test to see if we're still seeing heavy metals. If so, then we're going to use different chelating agents and stuff to pull them out, because that's a more serious thing. Lead, cadmium, mercury, arsenic, and also uranium show up in these tests. So that's one way of looking at it. Because of the certain level of air in the regular blood tests, okay, I tend to want to do more kinesiology type tests that are special, but the point is they have the same amount of air, but they don't cost as much, and you can repeat them, and you can check, and you can follow people, so it's easier. It's about the same level of accuracy. So we don't want to assume. I published in biochemistry and biophysics, so I have a certain background in these kind of things, and these things aren't accurate, okay? Your thyroid tests, according to thyroid experts, are 50% accurate. What are you going to do with that? Well, you'll work around it because you do other tests, but the same thing with these blood tests. Okay, so each test, the heavy metal tests in the hair are accurate. So we have to look at what's accurate and what isn't. People like the general screening tests. As I even said in the talk, I don't pay that much attention to cholesterol, but it's good to get a general screening test. And if something's wrong, I would repeat the test to see if it actually is the same, because we vary from day to day, and you want it to be repeated before you act on it. Then once you get your results that are repeated and it's clear that there is something here, then you would start doing whatever appropriate adjustments are to the situation. For example, let's say you're very high in copper, which is not good for your brain. And it's connected with paranoia and to a certain extent with schizophrenia. Well, first thing I'm going to do is give people zinc. to balance and force the copper out. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Which is we have to do what's appropriate to the situation. And that's how I kind of work with it. And I'll do whatever tests. There's many sophisticated tests out there, but I'm just saying we kind of want to use a certain amount of common sense, because if you got something that's 80% accurate, well, what about the 20% that may be inaccurate? So people tend to look at tests as if it's the gospel, and it's not.
Just quickly, one quick thing. Are we supposed to eat mushrooms raw, or is that something we don't eat?
It's a good question. I tend to want them like simmered for a few minutes. I just feel safer doing that.
Do you include them in your diet?
I do, and because they're extremely good for your health and diet. I won't go into all of them, and for longevity. But I tend to want to scrub them, soak them in hydrogen peroxide, take it off anything else, and then just kind of very, 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 very slightly saute them.
Okay. Dr. Cousens, you speak often about meditation. For those of us that would like to do it, but don't actually know how to do it, what is the fastest, least expensive, quickest way for us to learn how to do meditation so we can start doing it tonight?
I'm sorry I didn't do a meditation. Thank you for the question. It's easy. We're going to get it right now. Usually you want a mantra to focus your mind. The mantra I use is what I got at the end of a 21-day water fast. Yod on the in-breath, Hey on the out-breath. Wah on the in-breath, Hey on the out-breath. It's the name of God as grace. You simply do it with your breath until your mind's quiet. Then you're in meditation.
Say it
That's
again.
it. That's the whole thing.
Say it again.
Okay, so at the end of a 21-day water fast, I got this in 1995. This mantra, which is the name of God as grace, okay? It's what Moses got from the burning bush. Yod on the in-breath, Hey on the out-breath. Wah, not Vav, Wah on the in-breath, Hey on the out-breath. And you simply do it with your breath, synchronizing your breath with it, so it kind of stabilizes your mind. When your mind is stabilized, when your mind is quiet, you let go of the mantra and you're in meditation. That is it. There's nothing complicated about that. I'm glad you asked that question because I didn't do it at the beginning.
And how long do we do it for?
What I recommend is it's like building muscle. So start with 5 or 10 minutes for what you can do and slowly work up to a certain amount of time. When I was in India, I was meditating 6 hours a day, 2 hours at a time. I recommend for people to start with 5 or 10 minutes, see how they do. And then from there, you can gently increase it like 20 minutes once a day or twice a day. Twice a day is really good, in the morning and the evening. And then you can increase to a half hour or an hour twice a day, which is what I do.
Okay. Should we eat cacao, like cacao butter? Raw cacao and raw cacao butter?
I have raw cacao, okay, with my goji berries. And I grind it up. It's like powder. And the minimum you need is 1 tablespoon to supply all that you get from the cacao. I tend to go with 3 tablespoons, which is a maximum. You don't need more than that per day. And it's extremely good for you on multiple levels. I'm happy to give a talk on it, but obviously this isn't the right time. But I tell you what, I'm giving a talk also on supplements. Is that correct? And maybe I'll talk about cacao there too. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Final question for you is, There's different recommendations on fasting. Brian Clement says fast 1 day a week on juice. Other people say do intermittent fasting from dinner till, 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours the next day. Some people do weekly fast. We have two people talking about water fasting for multiple weeks. What guidance do you want to give us on things regarding fasting that you recommend?
Okay, first you need to know the New York Times said I was the fasting guru. I'm not joking, they actually said that. So, none of those are fasts. A fast begins when we go into fasting metabolism, which take somewhere between 12 and 72 hours to happen, where our body shifts away from carbohydrate metabolism into fat metabolism. Okay? Generally, then you have a detox for a few days. So I like a minimum of a 7-day fast. That's actually really a fast. In the last few days, you get really clear. So what we say is not eating is not a fast. You have to go into fasting physiology, as I explained, somewhere between 10 hours to 72 hours. So that's the first statement, is those are misuse of the word. I'm talking classic fasting, okay? It's a great question. So people misuse that. Abstinence from food is not the same thing as fasting. Second, if you're fasting, you need to take enemas. You need to just, to get out the toxins for the colon. You need to do skin brushing because you want the third of the toxins in the body come out through the skin. So you need to do adequate detox to deal with the detox that you're doing. In a day or two, that doesn't exactly happen. That's a cessation of eating. But after 2 to 3 days, it overlaps, everybody's different. Then you're actually physically detoxing and you have to get rid of the toxins that are accumulating in your urine. So you want to really have a lot of fluid, okay, to push that, counting that your kidneys are working right. And you want to do the toxins, as we mentioned, with the bowel toxins, with that, and the skin toxins, and the tongue scraping. Now you're fasting, because you're getting rid of all the toxins, and you've got 2 days where you're now away from carbohydrate metabolism, which is our general metabolism, into fat metabolism. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So it's a misuse of the term. It should just say withdrawal from food for a period of time.
Got it.
Could I just ask a quick question?
I'm talking classically how people talk about it.
I just want to ask one quick question on the fasting. How much water, and can you drink things like tea, like herbal tea or anything else during a fast?
Yes, but it depends who you are. There's also a diluted juice fast, which has comparative end results the same as a water fast. It's safer because there's minerals in it. You got a world in the US where 80% of people are deficient in magnesium. Well, I've seen it. People get heart spasms and different things happen because they're already low in magnesium. So I feel much safer, with a diluted juice fast where they're getting some from the greens, some magnesium. You see what I'm trying to say here?
Absolutely.
And people get really depleted in the water fast. So now I have done a 21-day water fast, and I was fine. I did my 100 push-ups at the end. That's how I see how I'm doing. Do you have any strength left? Okay, I guess it's okay. But what I'm saying is it's really, I like a diluted juice fast, so you're getting just a little bit of mineral, and it's still the effect of the fast as a detox, okay, works. And detox is a mental detox, an emotional detox. It's a really important part. That's part of the 7-day cycle, the minimum, as well as a physiological detox. So I kind of look at the whole thing. So we are doing a fast. Thank you for asking. On June 1st in the Dominican Republic, I invite everybody to come and have a fast with us.
So, Dr. Cousens, if people want to follow up with you about your fast, about your books, about your website, about your supplements, or if they want a private consultation with you, how does someone get in touch with you and stay in touch with you and speak to you? What are the options?
Sure. So they can go to info at treeoflife.nu, New Universe. It's that simple. For the fast, Dr. Cousens Fast, and .com, and that will take you to the immediate thing. But if they do, or they can just go to drcousens.com. So those are easy ways to do it.
Okay. Okay. If we could unmute everyone so that they can thank Dr. Cousens. Dr. Cousens, thank you so much for being willing to, from Israel, share all this great information and wisdom so we don't have to spend our lives figuring stuff out that you've already figured out. Really great. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having
Dr.
me.
Cousens.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Doctor.
you, everyone.